Welcome to Absurdum. I am Alex Adams here with the very handsome, very dashing Dallas Kasabowski. How are you, Dallas?
I'm doing well. How are you, Alex?
I'm feeling tip-top Magoo. Today we've got a brand spanking new episode for y'all, and we're going to be talking about a very, very near and dear topic to our hearts, a topic that is important to economics, society, culture.
I think you're overselling it. The topic is complaining about kids.
We're gonna be true millennials, true 30-year-old boomers, and we're gonna talk about this next generation, these new future chillins coming up from the ether. There.
So let's give a little bit of context,
Context.
so people understand where the hell this is coming from. So I brought this topic to Alex's attention a couple of weeks ago. I am kind of new to the community of like, not online gaming, but online gaming as a community. This is a new thing for me. Most of the time when I've played video games, they've been either single player or just with people I know, people in the same room sort of thing. But now I'm running in a game, and I'm running a clan, a group of people, and trying to organize them and such. And I've been running into behavior that's probably acceptable for most people, but it's at the very least, a little annoying for me, or at the most disruptive. And I've been finding that a lot of people are pretty accepting of this behavior, just because, kids will be kids, or, it's the internet, who cares? And I brought it to Alex's attention for three reasons. One, he's a different human being, and I value his perspective. Maybe he can calm me the hell down. Two, you have a bit more experience with like online communities of video gaming than I do. You started it at a different age than I did. And three, as someone with so much of a background of education and disciplining and just dealing with different age groups, I essentially wanted to find out. Are 14-year-olds terrible? Find out at 8,
You won't believe what these two people have to say about 14-year-olds. We gotta get that red arrow in the thumbnail, though. That's the chief salient feature.
Doctors hate them, yeah.
Just one weird trick. Okay, well, I don't suppose this topic is necessarily dated, because I feel like throughout history, there's always been a minor all the way up to a massive chasmic difference in the thoughts and feelings, the propensities, and the general philosophies of different generations. I mean, a generation is brought up under certain rules and customs, and people either embrace them or reject them. This is nothing new, ladies and gentlemen, what we're seeing with any generation of people. It's always been that people will grow up to be almost the opposite of the people that gave birth to them. But we live in a specific time with specific, technological advancements. So I feel now, more than ever, we are seeing the how do I say this without swearing profusely? The asininity of people in a global stage.
There's a joke that, some people say, seems like the world's getting dumber. You're seeing, dumber and dumber things online. And the joke is, the world isn't getting dumber. We're just having better connection to more of the world.
Yes.
Right? More of the people who, So let me give some, specific context to the situation, then we can broaden it out. So.
Absolutely.
So I'm running this community, and I started it mostly as a means of finding other people to play this game with. And, I had kind of loose criteria. They, had to be decent people and had to be interested in the game and blah, blah, blah. And what's happened is I've accrued a small community of people like, similar interests, similar, perspectives, except for one. One player joined us, and he immediately started exhibiting behavior that was more common with younger people. And as I said, I don't when I played video games, I never played in an online multiplayer sense until the last couple of years, unless you count like games with you guys, like in university, like where it was just the only people I was actually playing with, I knew them. So, there's a lot of norms and customs and stuff behind that. We can talk about that a little later, but what's essentially happened is this person, we've found out that he lied to us about his age. He said he was 24, and it turns out he's 14. He told us in the beginning that he didn't have, he actually told us that he was incapable of physically speaking. So all of his communication with us was done through text.
Wow.
Turns out that he's confided that he actually can physically speak, but one, doesn't have a microphone, and two, suffers from some kind of anxiety. He worries about speaking online. And it just keeps going. It just keeps, his behavior is very frivolous. He asks a lot of questions that kind of get a little bit annoying to deal with, and he's been trying my patience. And I've brought this up a couple of times. I spoke to him already about the lying. I think a lot of it stems from the fact that he is young. And again, this is an ageist thing. It's just he does not have the same experience dealing with people as maybe someone who's a bit older does. And I think the reason he has anxiety over speaking is because when people hear his voice, they realize he's younger and they make a lot of assumptions, and then they remove him from the group. They kick him out of the clan. So he's trying to avoid that by creating a persona that allows him to better integrate. And for that, I have sympathy. I'm trying to reassure him, you don't have to lie. We now know who you are, so let's just play. You don't have to pretend. If you don't want to speak, fine, but you have to realize that reading your text while we're playing a high-intensity game is a bit more difficult than if we just heard you. And what's happened is, for the most part, he's accepted that. But he and others continue to act in this way. And drawing from a very specific metaphor, but there's this old Bugs Bunny cartoon where there's a big grumpy dog and there's a little yippy yappy dog. And the little yappy one jumps around and bugs him and doesn't stop talking, and doesn't start asking the same kind of irritating questions. And the grumpy dog is, get out of here. And what's happened is I've tried to express to this young...
Are you the grumpy dog? Is that
I'm
you?
the grumpy dog. I'm trying to tell him, don't ask me obvious questions. Don't be like this. And some of the other members of our clan who are older than I am, and they have kids, they have a lot more sympathy to his situation. Partly because they're not dealing with it as directly. Since I run the clan, I have to deal with it a lot more. But I told them, I don't appreciate lying. I don't appreciate being, don't ask me a million obvious questions when we're playing a game like that. And they're like, he's 14, it's fine. All 14-year-olds are like that. And for the last piece of context, I was not a normal 14-year-old. I bet if we compare your 14-year-old self, Alex, to mine, it would be very different. Mm-hmm. So I'm just here to learn a little bit and exchange perspectives. So maybe while we let all that kind of ruminate in the back of one's mind, I know you've played online games a lot more, like in your youth and stuff like that as well. When did you start with things like when did you start playing a game in which you were communicating effectively with strangers?
I began with Diablo 2 and maybe 1998. So I would probably be 10 or 11 years old. That was through text. And ironically, I learned to type with Diablo 2. I learned to type in home row because you would open a text box, your character would stand still, and all the enemies would sort of slowly advance upon you and start shredding you to bits. And you had to type your text. It had to be legible enough to be heard, and then press enter in order to keep walking around. I did a lot of disreputable things. I admit it. I scammed people out of items. I said a lot, like blue language and a lot of, trolling and all that kind of stuff. And you can take a lot of modalities to view somebody who is going through the stages of maturity under a spotlight or in a community. It's kind of interesting because when you look at a high school or you look at a middle school, that's almost like the bizarre exception. I'm sure if we dialed back humanity a couple thousand years, you have people of a variety of ages sort of interacting with one another. You've got kids, adults, infants, people who are middle-aged, married, unmarried, kids, and no kids. And that, I feel like, has a bit more grounding effect to a young man or woman. What you have now in like a school setting, that's the primary setting where people get their stuff, their how they want to act with their peer group. But when you have a high school or middle school, all you have are other high schoolers or middle schoolers. Mm-hmm. What's the chief feature of a high schooler or a middle schooler? Identity is being shaken up, physiological changes, puberty. Boys starting to like boys and girls starting to like boys starting to like boys and girls, et cetera, et cetera. But all you have for your reference material are other people who have, for lack of a better word, identity crises. So, and I've seen this as an educator. You have, the absolute necessity of kids to like form cliques, to be cool, to be respected. And when you take that, somebody who's sort of been immured in that context, and you put them in a situation where they have anonymity, you can be anyone. You can create a persona, and especially in a video game. So you have a video game setting or like an online setting. First off, there's anonymity and there's no repercussions for your actions usually. So because you asked me how I sort of move through the platforms of like maturity through video games. I had Diablo 2, and then I got into World of Warcraft for many years. I was in a guild. We raided, and for lack of a better, to make a long story short, I basically for the most part kept my mouth shut. Like I was a comparable player, and I was funny as any like 15, 16-year-old could be at that period of time, and I connected with other people. And it actually was kind of a shock to me at that age because I found out that the guild leader of our guild was like 40, in his 40s. And that kind of freaked me out because it's like, whoa, like he's like a dad. He's like an old man. That's kind of like gross. Like, wow, he's not cool. He's like, well, he plays good and stuff, but like that's kind of weird. And like we had a guild forum, and like he was showing pictures. Like he had posted pictures of like his fishing boat, and that's kind of like, he's like an old man. So that's sort of the situation where somebody is a kid, is like learning to be an adult, and you're interacting with other people. I feel like, Dallas, if the curtain was pulled back, much like in many other digital situations, people will be acting much differently. You're acting, you spoke earlier about a persona. That person's entire avatar is a persona. You're all in personas. Mm-hmm. You are acting through, your agency is acting through this digital person, and you're doing cool shit in the digital world, and you're basically pretending to be somebody else. And for a 14-year-old kid to pretend to be somebody else and be liked and accepted in a world where they want to be liked and accepted so bad, and their whole school environment is nothing but other kids who are shunning kids and taking kids in and having cliques that are flying apart and mushing together. I can understand the pressure to be cool, to conform, even if it means pretending to be somebody else, even if it means bullying other people, because it's extra easy to bully in the digital world. Cyberbullying is the new,
the new hotness,
the new thing to do, to be liked and accepted. It's all you got to do is find somebody else's fault and make it.
Find the weaker gazelle, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, and see, this is the thing. I get it. Like when I have a hard time with liars. I don't like anyone who, like, I understand that there's, kind of white lies, and there may be, if you're watching a movie or something, like a character sometimes has to lie for the greater good or whatever. I get it. But in general, a direct, bold-faced lie to me is one of the quickest ways for me to immediately erase you from the list of what I consider a human being. Like I just you just lied to my face, even though I made it very clear and accepting that you could tell me the truth. Oh boy, do we have problems! It's a selfish thing. There's a lot. So when I found that out, I was very upset. But I took a step back and was like, okay, he's probably lying because of this whole, like, he probably played games with a microphone. People found out he was young. He had a squeaky voice. They called him a squeaker, and they immediately removed him from the group. And that's probably why he's doing it. And I explained that to him. I said, I asked him, is this why you're doing that? Like, if it is, you don't need to do that with us. We don't care your age. We don't care what your voice sounds like. You can be goofy for all we care. It's just, you need to be, you need to accept that we want to play with you, and you have to, be respectful. And he has continued on this path, and it got to, things like, it's kind of weird to explain out of context, but just things like asking questions that I would consider repetitive and to the point of being dumb, just a lot of annoying behavior. And on the one hand, I'm trying to take his feelings into consideration. I'm trying to help him integrate into the group. But on the other hand, I don't play video games so I can be someone's father. I don't, there's a limit to my own patience. There's a limit to my own understanding. And he's not quite meeting me halfway. And now I've had some of the other members of the group who have been back and forth on this subject. On the one hand, his behavior bothers them as well. But on the other hand, they're like, well, he's just a kid. And I've argued with them. I said, well, what does that mean? Because I didn't play my first game with online multiplayer capability until university.
Whoa.
Because in my house, we didn't really have like a video gaming console until I was about maybe 16. We have dial-up, or we did have dial-up at home, so there was no online real capability. So yeah, I didn't really get into that. So I've come about it kind of in the opposite way. So by the time I started playing games like that, I'd already gone through a lot of trial and error and failed social graces and whatever. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect, as I said before, is I wasn't your typical 14-year-old. I literally had a conversation with my parents where they said, if you don't put that book down and go go and hang out with friends and like go to the high school dance, then we're going to take all your books away. Stuff like that. Like I got like reverse grounded, because I was a weird kid that way. So it's been really difficult for me to understand when they say, he's a 14-year-old. I'm like, I don't understand you. I've never been like this in my life. And I'm not saying I was a perfect child. It's just I've been very serious for a very long time. So when I run into someone who's very not serious, it's confusing. It's a language I don't understand.
Well, I feel like there's definitely something lost in translation. Here, allow me to play devil's avocado. Why don't you just kick the guy? Like this is the Wild West. Like if you're talking video game, like if you're talking rating, there's a big difference between a pub or a pickup group in any kind of game, like a shooter or what have you. RTS is one-on-one. Fighting games one-on-one. If you're talking like any kind of game where you need any kind of coordination, that's where the slope. It's this whole new skill set. I'm sure you've become, ingratiated with. There's a whole new skill set. It's the guild politic, right? Mm-hmm. You begin to need to have to manage people and learn to be managed and be told, no, you can't go to this dungeon, or no, you're not going to get this item, and telling people difficult situations. And it's something that I never did. I have friends. I mean, I was part of a raiding guild in World of Warcraft and a variety of other MMOs afterwards. But I have a friend of mine and friends of mine in that area that was. And I know I gave you the question, but I'll give you an aside here. I had a friend who got into another guild in World of Warcraft. We were on the same server. And his guild was like the primo power guild. They had the most powerful characters in the server, really, really skilled players. They were getting so much loot because they were like being able to grind out dungeons really quickly. And I'm like, I want to get in. You're my friend. We were friends in middle school. Let me in. And he's like, well, I'll see. And I was trying to get in. And basically, he kept hounding one of the guild masters, one of the officers of the guild that he was in, and he basically got his head torn off. They're like, if you keep, like, shut up. If you keep telling him to get this other guy in, he needs to get interviewed like everybody else, like, interviewed. You know what I mean? Like, literally an interview. He needs to get interviewed like everybody else. If you, like, don't shut up with this, you're getting G-kicked too. So shut up and learn your place, da-da-da-da. And, like, that was shocking to him, and then he sort of translated that to me. He's like, listen, you need to stop asking me. Just be happy in the guild that you're in. You're not going to get in my guild. You're not good enough. And that, to be frank, where that pressure is coming from, ironically, is from the game itself. Because if the game is difficult and you need to have, people who just need to learn to do their job as a player or a class, and as the complexity, because different guilds are there for different reasons, like casual guilds and more serious guilds, but as a guild becomes more serious, the administrative body begins to coalesce and begins to congeal, and rules of order begin to emerge. And if you had a situation, like, let's say, so somebody doesn't text, right? Or doesn't speak on mic. In a serious guild and a lot of serious games, that's a deal killer off the bat. Like, you haven't been on mic, goodbye. So I feel personally that you are, like, I want to pose that question to you. Why have you not just kicked him already?
This basically falls into two answers. One is a short and easy one, and one is there's a deeper problem at work. The short answer is because when we started playing, we were playing in a relaxed situation, and I was trying to encourage. I'm trying to encourage positivity in the greater gaming community. My channel, my clan, my activities, my videos, like, they are all about that, because the short answer started to become long. But the short answer is we were playing in a low intensity setting, and I didn't mind. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't mind reading a message every once in a while in between fighting monsters. It wasn't a big deal. So that's the short answer. And the longer one is, this actually runs into an issue that I personally have with leadership.
Yes.
Which is, I'm not quite sure when to be authoritative and strict in leadership.
Yes.
Because I noticed this when I was a team manager, project manager for a team of students during my master's degree.
That's experience.
We had a big issue with meeting deadlines, and I had a really hard time putting my foot down. Yes. Part of that was because I had no authority at all. I was another student just like them. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't fail them. I couldn't penalize them in any way. So I tried to focus on the positive. I tried to motivate them and stuff. And I got frustrated because it felt like I had no authority. It felt like I was weak. It felt like I was a pushover, because there was never a punishment for the crime. There was just more understanding and motivation. Yeah. So now switch to this situation. I realize he's a kid. I realize he's just trying to learn, and the only way you're going to learn is I feel that if I kick him out of the clan, he's not going to have any friends. He's going to spend all of his time in gaming, raging out by himself, and that's no way for him to learn. Maybe he'll learn to not do that behavior, and then maybe he'll learn to stop that behavior and to make friends. But really, if you're not exposed to positive behavior and you're not reinforced on it, how do you learn? So,
man, I thought you didn't want to be his father.
Yeah. I don't.
I kid.
But I feel like, think of it this way, and this is a bad example, but it is kind of relevant. Mm-hmm. If this kid was semi-suicidal,
yes,
and there was literally nothing else I could do for him, I couldn't send, an ambulance to his house. I couldn't email his mother and be like, what are you doing? If I just like hang up the phone, I know there's a line as to how far people can go to support others and they need to help themselves, but like, wouldn't you keep that phone on the whole time to make sure that like everything's going to be okay? That's kind of how I feel with this kid. And on a less serious note, I am very strict and I have very high standards. And I'm not perfect, but I can be very exacting. And one place that I kind of failed as a leader is understanding where the group needs to be in line with my own expectations. And the problem is this. I look around and I'm like, why are you doing that? Don't lie. Never. Absolutely not. Why haven't you finished this task? Why aren't you balancing 3 tasks like I am? And in my effort to learn compassion and empathy with people, I find I'm a little bit too compassionate. And that sounds like a weird brag, but it's more like, oh, you didn't get your work done? Oh, yeah, traffic was bad, or oh, whatever. Yes. Whereas I should be like, no, you didn't get the stuff done. I'm disappointed in you. I now have to face this consequence, and so do you. So with this kid, it's like, you're being really annoying. You're disrupting us. We are a completely different kind of community than you are, i.e. we're older and we have different interests and we're mature people. You need to go because you don't fit in with us. But at the same time, I am trying to, understand the situation better. And that's why I reached out to you about this, because you deal with kids. You've dealt with them. You've been one in a gaming community and had, negative stuff done, like, negative clan pressure, like you just said.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to work out, like, am I justified in following through with it? What are some pitfalls that other people did to you that maybe I should learn to avoid? Or, oh, no, actually, tough love really helped me in this situation. And then I can feel a bit more validated in what I do.
Wow. I got to say, that's very commendable, Dallas, that you... Because from what I'm hearing is I'm getting sort of the general philosophy of your online group. And I also wanted to mention as an aside, these groups that boys and girls, men and women belong to are often far more the interconnection, the social interconnection and web of friendships that arise in an online group often transcends one or even many games. I know many people who have met online friends and are dear friends with them for nearly a decade. I have Steam friends that I'm friends with when I was playing Left 4 Dead that I'm still friends with more than a decade later, and those group of friends will move from game to game. Age gap notwithstanding, being able to be being congruent with that philosophy of being there for one another is fantastic, especially when you're talking about digital strangers. So that's really cool, because that's the first thing if you're talking about pitfalls and how to lead a digital community. You want to know what basically your thesis statement of why you're all together is. If you're all together to have a good time, the perfect example is you look at Smash Brothers and there's the 2 windows of competitive. Are you playing for fun or are you playing for glory? If you're playing for fun, then and I feel like you fall into this former group, then that's the kind of angle you want to get at with. Okay, nobody's perfect. You can be exacting and you can have boundaries and limitations on how people can act, but they're coming from a different perspective. If you're playing for glory, there's a very famous, Dives was a very famous, I think he was a World of Warcraft raid leader in the mid 2000s, for those of you who play WoW during the Onyxia raids, pre-TBC, and there are some famous blowouts from this person. He was Scandinavian, so it's extra scary to hear him freak out. But you look at that as an outsider and you say, how can someone become so furiously angry over what is essentially nothing, like sports, right? And the answer is the stakes for them are so high because that's what they're playing for. That's their thesis statement. We got to be the guild that kills Onyxia first, or kills whatever. We need to be the guild that gets this item first. And everything else, all those other priorities that other guilds have, fall by the wayside. And what you get is an extremely A competent group of video game players who are sacrificing up to 15 hours of their lives a week to get really good at this one thing. Not a moral thing. That's just what they're out to get.
Yeah.
So one of the common pitfalls I would say, and this I'm drawing on some of my experiences as an educator, as me getting some flack from other people, is if you can't, and this is from Scooter Braun, you can't take away someone's justification for your feelings. Even if they're totally wrong. You can't take away someone's justification for how they feel. If a computer is malfunctioning, you're not going to yell at the computer. You're gonna go inside and you're gonna understand and empathize with why they're feeling the way they're feeling. What is justifying it? So the approach something like, I don't know what you're feeling right now. I don't even understand you. So I want to say that I recognize those feelings. And now that I recognize those feelings, help me understand what's going on here. There's an important difference between being responsible for something and being accountable. You look at somebody, a 14-year-old, or somebody with anxiety, or somebody with a substance abuse problem, or just somebody who forgets things all the time. Maybe they are not responsible for their actions. What is responsible? Maybe their environment, maybe their past, maybe a free association that they received through some sort of traumatic event or emotionally charged event. But they are not responsible, but they are accountable. There's a fight, something got broken. Okay, who is responsible? Okay, maybe it's too complex. Maybe he may be angry and he said, she said. Okay, fine. But you are accountable. The thing has been broken. You need to account for that. That is the problem that is arising. Getting into power struggles with kids as a leader of children, as an educator, it never works, because it's either you either save face for yourself and the kid comes away resentful, or you look like an idiot and the kid quote unquote wins. So power struggles never work. And it's even more of a difficulty in a digital context. I doubt that this will happen in your digital group per se, because there's people of a variety of ages, but I've seen multiple situations where a senior officer or a guild leader goes ape-s on another member, and he reams them out and calls them all sorts of names and makes them feel like crap. And then what happens? He leaves the guild. And then what happens after that? All of his friends and social connections and people from the real world leave that guild too. And the guild goes through a schism. The guild breaks apart, usually right down the middle. Everyone either agrees with person A or person B, and like a pant seam, the guild goes and rips apart. And that's bad for everybody, especially if you're talking about a raiding guild, because they need all those people to be like a united effort. Mm-hmm. So the important takeaways are so for instance, the person in this situation, they're asking annoying questions, they're being annoying, they're not shutting up, they're lying about themselves. Okay, maybe they're not responsible for that action, but they are accountable. And what is the accountability issue here? It's you're spoiling the focus of the group. We're trying to raid here. We're trying to get some stuff done. Stop with the questions right now. You can ask us later when we're back wherever in a more social situation. But right now, thing XYZ has to be done. And are you on board? And then it's like getting all those people in both chains of command. Because if they don't care, they don't care. But the person you're talking to, are you on board? Like, do you want to get this done? Well, yeah. Okay, well then this is what we're expecting. We got to be tight and focused. We got to do this. No questions right now. No stupid questions right now. We'll save the questions for later. And that's basically it. You communicate your feelings. You have this thesis statement of your guild. Communicate your feelings and know that you can't. People are going to feel the way they're going to feel. Yeah. And you can't take away their justification for feeling how they feel.
And that's another thing that's kind of funny, is that we do some more hardcore kind of glory based serious competitive stuff, and there've been one or two times. There was one time recently where he wasn't actually playing with us; he was just in the chat, and his chat was distracting. And we said, okay, sorry, but we're doing this thing. We're gonna ask that you leave for now. so that we can concentrate on the game. And he did, and it was fine, and it went well. But another thing I was going to say, another reason that I haven't just kicked him is because when people exhibit a behavior that is just riding the line, it's really difficult. And sometimes you really wish they would just cross the line so that you can be like, boom, example, done. But when they just ride the line, it's like, yeah.
So and that's sorry to cut you off, but that's why, like, that is what people will do. That is what kids and adults will do. You have clear delineations, like in a classroom or in any setting, a business setting, you have clear delineations about what is acceptable and what is not. And people, it's just, the truth of human nature, will just push and see where the walls are. And if there's no walls, they'll keep pushing. But if it's like, okay, you do this, you're banned. Or you do this, you're going to get reamed out, or I'm going to yell at you, or we're going to mute you. And then they're like, okay, well, I know I can't do that, but I can do stuff that's almost that. And I guess the response is either to like say, no, that's bad too, or just, live with it. But I know exactly what you mean with, someone who's just sort of like, I don't know what the word is, like a jackanape or whatever, who's just like riding the line and like just being more normal, please. Could you stop with all the weird comments and,
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to describe this kind of stuff out of context, because it's like, oh, he's being annoying, how terrible. But it's different than that. It's sometimes it's just annoying. Mostly for me, it's a disrespect issue. And again, if I'm being empathetic here, it's not entirely that he's being purposefully disrespectful to any of us. Yes. It's that he doesn't have the sense of himself or where he is or how he's acting. He doesn't have the sense of others. And I feel that this is just, generally speaking, this is something that young people have.
It's an age thing. It's legit. It is legit a brain thing. The cerebral cortex, the front of the brain, is literally not there yet. It's not grown yet.
Yeah. So I just feel that he doesn't understand how his behavior is affecting us. And we're trying to make it clear to him, at the same time kind of curtailing that kind of behavior. But yeah, I was explaining to him, actually, that, I was explaining to him two concepts. One of them is reading the room, being able to assess what the audience around you wants so that you can know, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that thing anymore. I can't remember the second thing that I was going to say, but I've been trying to... Oh, the fact that there are many things in life that we learn, but we're never taught.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they're
unwritten rules.
Yeah, and the only way that they are taught is through experience. So you might learn, like, people don't, If someone receives bad news, you don't want to tell them something inane, something ridiculous. And you may not have been physically told by someone, don't tell that kind of a joke at this specific moment. But you understand, oh, that person's sad and my actions will continue to make them sad or angry or whatever. And that's the thing with this kid, is that I feel like if I don't provide roadblocks, he'll just keep pushing the line. And yet I am not here to set up his entire social education. I'm just here to shoot monsters. So maybe what would you suggest then? Like, either, take your teaching experience. What are some good ways forward for because the good news about all of this is it's given me a lot to think about, and it's made me kind of think, what kind of a clan do I want to have? Because when we started it was just close personal friends. It wasn't like there was no motto or goal. Yep. But now that it's expanding to people who don't really know us, different backgrounds, I have made a bit of a goal. It's to have fun, to be kind and be good, because apparently those things are so rare on the internet that you need to state them as actual goals. To be inclusive, and to also to be understanding, especially with the idea that, and this goes against anything any World of Warcraft guild probably ever talked about, but I specifically made a statement in our clan that sometimes life takes a front seat and you have to step away from the game to deal with life. And I tried to make that clear because there are some really competitive things we want to do, but I don't want to be one of those people who's like, what? You have a family or kids or a job? You're cut.
Yes, and that happens.
And it does. And if you want to surround yourself with that kind of person, that is your right, and that's obviously fine. As long as you make it clear in the beginning. So now that I've made this clear, I've tried to make it clear to the clan. We're accepting. We're not going to, be bullies. We're not going to run around swearing all the time. We're not going to, just be intolerant. And we're all 99% of the clan are older people with an entirely different perspective. So
yes,
how do you suggest I proceed with this? If right now things are on a bit of a hiatus, he's kind of backed away from the game, maybe the problem will solve itself. But maybe he'll come back into the game and continue with his issues. And he won't push the line enough that can justify me in just removing him, other than the stress he causes from me thinking about it too much.
Yes.
So, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if there's one thing I know about 14-year-olds is that they're fickle in their video game tastes, and that if he's been playing, depending on how long. Now, I mean, like a game like the game that you're playing is one of those like lifer games. But actually, as lifer games go, it's not like up there with like Eve and Monster Hunter.
Yeah, he started to play other games. Actually, the new expansion came out. He didn't buy it, so maybe, like I said, maybe the situation. But how going forward then? How do what would you suggest as just a general leader, or as either in a situation of general leadership or a specific situation of dealing with children?
The salient question that you want to ask is, are they listening? And are they modulating their behavior based on what you're saying? To assess progress in anything, it's their most recent and their most consistent demonstration of a given skill. So I would have to ask, in a similar situation, vis-a-vis now versus 6 months ago or whatever, 4 months ago, is he acting any different? Is he curtailing, is he holding his tongue which in similar cases he would not be? Or is he acting in a different way where in similar cases he would be acting in a way that would be more annoying? Is he asking less annoying questions as time is going on? You offer the goal, you offer where you want them to be and where they are, and they have to feel empowered, like they can change. This is becoming like a self-help thing, but then you see the gap. All guilds basically have 3 stages of growth. You start with a group of usually real life or like-minded friends, and they come together and form the core element of the guild. These are people that know each other in real life, or they're very good friends. They've been together with one another, and they go about the game. Usually, and I'll do the modality of a pro guild, a guild going pro. The second phase is where you start to take on strangers, digital strangers, and those strangers conform to your rules or not. And in the second growth phase, what happens, it becomes an event horizon where the original group of people or like-minded friends become vastly outnumbered by the other people that come in. And usually several things happen. Usually, or sometimes it's you have this consortium of the top group that all know each other, and then the rabble. And those guilds don't really go anywhere, because then it's the top people are going to get all the best items. Everyone else is going to get nothing. They're going to work really hard to basically support the top people. They're going to say, to heck with this. And then the guild splits apart. The other way to do it is that other people in the guild that are the strangers sort of rise to prominence. They have a charisma, and they take the guild in a completely another direction that the original guild people didn't want in the first place, and then they break off and they form their own guild again. And then you have this other guild that has sort of been created from this initial friend group. But the third way is, and this falls in line with being a leader in a digital or in a real world thing, is your ultimate capacity. It's the law of multiplication. Your capacity as a leader is to train up and lead other leaders who will eventually take on all the roles that you already have. you basically erase yourself from the situation. So a true guild is like, let's say, has that cheat consortium. They train up officers, and those officers train up other officers. So it is not a quote-unquote hero-based system where 2 or 3 or 4 people sort of have the role of being, the ultimate arbiters of, in your case, like social decorum or, the ability to interact with people or just skills in general. But you have you train up the officers of each, of each class of character in a video game or of each department in a business. And then those people have all that they need to be everything that you are. And then they have that seed of ability to train up other people. So my grand theme to you would be get that kid up to your level and have him tell other people how to live. Now, this is, of course, a 10-year plan. This is a 10-year plan. This is not a 6-month plan. But you have other people to carry on that message of what you are all about. And then you're not resenting it, because if it's all on you, Dallas, and if you're the bottleneck, you explode, you implode. You're just one person. You can't be that. You can't be in charge of telling everybody how to act and what to do and how to do that stuff. So you have to have the system. It's going to be a systems-based success and not a hero-based success.
Yeah. Okay. Now. Let's jump into some specifics here.
Oh, yeah.
How do I do that with this kid? Because we're only interacting in a voice-to-text based system. I'm in the party chat with others using my...
Does he have a mic?
He doesn't have a mic, and we've
Mike in 2 weeks or you're banned. Mike in 2 weeks or you're banned. This is fun.
Well, see, and this is the thing, is we've talked about it a lot, and whether he's telling me the truth or not, he has told me that he suffers from rage, and he suffers from anger issues, and he suffers from anxiety. This is what he's told me.
Yeah.
He's also told me he was 24, and that was a lie, so...
yeah, it throws everything into question.
He has cried wolf a couple of times, but... he's told me that every time the thought of getting a microphone or using a microphone crosses his mind, he gets anxious and he's nervous and all this. And we've told him, yeah, if you want to do any rating with us, which we rarely do, but we're starting to get into more, if you want to do some of the serious stuff with us, you need a microphone. We can't be reading text when we're trying to pay attention to the game. It's too high intense for that. In a low intensity environment, whatever. We've tried to tell him that, and he's, continued. And yeah, on that point alone, I kind of agree with you. Get a microphone. If you want to interact with us, you have to interact in the way that we all want. It's not an unreasonable request. But he hasn't. And so we're interacting in this, like I said, voice-to-text thing. I'm speaking, he's typing. And
yes,
that alone is a bit difficult, but I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be patient. And then on top of that, a lot of it just comes down to policing. That's basically what I've been doing a lot, where I've laid out the expectations, but I feel like one of the issues that I have is that some of my role models of characters growing up were characters like Spock and Data, who were entirely logic-based.
Shocking.
And one of their biggest failings as characters was they couldn't understand emotions or emotional illogic. And this kind of happens with this kid. So in a context of the kind of annoying behavior is he asked a question, and he asked a question about the story. And I told him, don't you remember this part? It was explained. And he's like, no, I guess I missed that. And I was like, you couldn't have missed that. It was literally the entire point of the 3-hour story you just played.
It's like watching a movie with your boyfriend. And he's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Who's that guy? It's the first time we saw him.
Yeah. And I'm trying to say to him, you need to, just pay attention to that stuff. And Or a better example is he'll say things like he used to rage a lot, and he used to call people. He used to type in the chat that because he was mad at other players, people we weren't speaking with, enemy team members, enemy team. He would call them names and not appropriate ones. I don't even want to repeat it. And I told him that's not acceptable. I told him that's not a thing we are allowed to do here when you play with us.
Yeah.
And the kind of annoying part is that he's asked why. He doesn't apparently understand that you can't go around calling people these things. And at first I thought he was trolling me. At first I thought he was just kind of grinding my gears like, well, why can't I call them gay? Why can't I call them this? But I literally think he doesn't understand. I think he's a kid and he doesn't get it, and he's used to hearing that language all the time, and I've explained to him. But I also remember those times when Spock and Data didn't understand something, and so they tried to explain it, and the whole joke of the scene was, you don't need to explain it. They actually understand. You're just explaining the joke. You know what I mean?
I'll give you two options for that one from a position of leadership. One is from Jocko Willink. He wrote this really good book called Extreme Ownership. And he basically said that for a mission to succeed, you need to people need to understand why on both chains of command. You need to explain why it's important up the chain of command or down the chain of command. And if someone doesn't understand why if someone doesn't understand the value of a certain thing or the priority of a certain thing, then it's your responsibility as a leader or whatever you are, as subordinate up that chain of command to explain, even to your superiors. Now, the other situation, like, this isn't a military thing. You can just pull a tautology on this kid and be like, those are the rules. If you don't like it, you're out. And to be stern and to be strict because that's, I've played that card before when necessary, because you can usually tell. Now, here's the thing though, it's the text. Because 80% of what you're getting through somebody's communication is through their voice and through their face and through their movements and their gestures. So I can tell a big difference between a kid being like, why? And like, why? Yeah. Like, those are vastly different messages that I'm getting, and those would very much have an initial response. I very much think, and also, I'm of the mind to believe that this person is so used to the environment. Like, I won't beat around the bush here. The environment that you're creating in the digital sphere is the abject minority. No one's in an environment where they're not, calling each other gay and teabagging each other and doing all sorts of stuff. It is omniscient. It's omnipresent. So it might just be like what? Like, we don't do that kind of thing? And in that case, you can be like, yeah, listen, we're a family-friendly guild. We're da-da-da-da. Here's our rules. If you forget, read them on the friggin' webpage. And there's no harm. I mean, you again, you're not this kid's dad. You're not dad, and you don't take it on yourself to be that kind of moral arbiter. But you can just be like, no, those are the rules.
I think that's what I need to do. I've been very patient, and I've been very I've tried to explore the space and explain it to him. And I think what ends up happening is that, like I said before, I think what ends up happening is that I have some very absolute criteria, but I almost feel guilt, like pre-guilt, over enforcing that criteria. Like, what gives what gives you the right to do that? And then I go too far the other way, where I'm like, oh, you want to run around calling everyone gay? Well, that's your culture, but you shouldn't do that here. That's, and I capitulate. Yes. So I think what I need to do is just explain what I want and how I want it, and realize that it is I'm creating this social space. So it is my social space.
That's right,
and
it is.
Certain behavior is allowed in my social space, and I'm entitled to that, as long as I explain it. If I explain it...
You don't even have to explain it.
No, but I mean, as long as I make it clear what it is. I have to be, you know what I mean? Like, someone comes in, they do a behavior. Yes, I could be entitled to kick them immediately out. But if I don't at least say, hey, I don't tolerate this, stop. Can you stop?
Well, and those are your rules that you establish too. You can say, like, you could give people 3 warnings, you could give people 1, but don't get it twisted, man. You could say if you have band power and whatever, if you're the head honcho, you can just say no racism, no, you will be banned without warning, the end. Yeah. And then someone drops an N-bomb and they're gone. Like that's it.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to, like, right now the clan description is kind of vague. It's mostly more of a motto than a set of rules.
Yeah.
I think I'll add a few kind of specific, and you'd think kind of unnecessary, but that's the problem, is that you're right.
You gotta get granular, man.
I am a light in the murkiness of the internet right now. Yeah. And I just have to make it clear what it is that I want and how it's going to be enforced. And when people go out of line, remind them of that fact. And if they still go out of line, then I can remove them. And I have to learn to feel justified in following through. And that's the thing, is that outside of work, I haven't really been in a social space. I've been in a lot of leadership positions in a social environment, but it's generally been with other like-minded people.
Yes.
And it's either been with like-minded people where I have no real power, so I have to capitulate because I can't enforce anything. Yes. Or more of the time, it's been with like-minded people who don't really step that far out of line with my expectations because we're all the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think now I have to just say, these are the rules. You know the rules. You have broken them. You are leaving now. I have that power, and that's the thing. I feel like it comes across as a lack of confidence, but it's not exactly confidence. It's more of a
might just be experience, man.
It is experience. It's not a lack of self-confidence. It's a lack of confidence in the authority that I have. Because no one's given it to me. I've just created
it. Listen, if you've got like a gas-powered nail gun and you've never used it before, it doesn't matter how smart or self-confident you are, you're going to be very hesitant to pull that trigger.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know when and where and what the context is. But all it takes, and take it from me, because when you make a kid cry, when you're sending kids off, like, and writing them up and calling their parents, it's rough to do. It's rough to be that bad guy. But eventually you understand that it's a tool. It has its place, and without it, it would be a worse situation to live and work in.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I think this is good. I think that's what I'm going to do. Is just I've started making it more clear in a general way what kind of an environment that I want to interact with. I need to make it clear in a specific way, and then if people deviate from it, they have no excuse, and I, should follow up on that.
And you and people will appreciate that. You don't want to I'll say this. Don't try to please everybody, and don't try, if you cast a net too wide and you capitulate too much, sure, you'll get a lot of memberships. And this happens to a lot of guilds too. They don't really know where they're at. They don't know if they're casual or hardcore. They don't know what kind of language they tolerate. If they're into really, because there's guilds out there that like really blue language and raunchy stuff. But if you cast a wide net and everyone gets in, and then if no one knows what the rules are, and everyone's trying to, and then it's like, well, I can do what I want because there are no rules. And then, well, there kind of are, and then there's no repercussions. And I'll say this one thing after I'll say this thing. When you're walking a dog, and the dog's deviating for where you want to go, and yes, I'm relating younger kids to dogs and animals. When you, Dallas just kind of had to do face. When you're walking a dog and the dog's deviating from the path that you want to go, you don't gradually pull against their collar, because they'll feel the pressure the dog will feel the pressure against their neck, and they'll kind of be like, they'll fight against it, they'll buck against it, they'll be like, what's this pressure? What you do instead is you have one forceful yank, and you just yank them back. And then the dog is like, whoa! And then the dog changes direction, and then the dog is fine. And outside of that singular disparate thing, they're not feeling any pressure. They can sort of go where they please, and then they're going all all where they want to go, and they get yanked. And I feel like that's the same with people. No one likes to get leaned on and sort of like nagged to death, right? Then it just kind of feels like there's no there's no actual power here. Like, get off my back. Yeah, I heard that before. But if it's like you're totally whatever, and then it's like, that's unacceptable. You do that again, you're banned. Do you understand? Okay, great. And then, boom, back to normal, back to baseline.
Yeah.
And that's how people know where...
That's it. It's been like, it's a new experience for me dealing with people in a context where I need them to be acting in the same sphere as I am, but they don't come from that same sphere at all.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I've never been a teacher. And you know...
Well, you're a shooter. But that's
one-on-one.
Yeah,
but it's a one-on-one, and really, if they don't behave, I just leave. I still get paid.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, my God, yeah.
So, yeah, I think all of this has been really helpful. I'm going to end this soon. I'm just going to give the general feeling that I think you'll agree with, which is if you, listener out there, are in similar kind of experience, I know that it is tempting to feel that the internet is the Wild West and there is no light there, but just because everyone else thinks it's normal to throw around the N-word, just because everyone else thinks it's normal to be disrespectful or to be hateful or to have harassment, doesn't mean it has to be. So you can find, or in my case, make your own community that conforms to that expectation. And I think that's been a learning experience for everyone, especially this young player, is that, oh, what? You like you said, you don't want me to run around swearing all the time? Why? Yeah. And so,
we'll like you anyway. We'll love you anyway. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You have to make people feel small for you to feel big.
Yeah. So, all right, everyone, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully your kind of relationships, whether they're digital or real or in real life, whatever, are going well, and hopefully this has helped.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next time on Absurdum. Y'all have a great next hour.
Bye now.
Hope your next hour is good. See you.